Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, depending on where you are, and welcome to this webinar, whose theme is the African Agriculture Barometer, a tool to understand, foster dialogue, and take action. My name is Aimable Twagirayezu. I'm the Programs Officer at the Pan-African Farmers Organization. I will moderate this session. But ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, please be aware that this session will be recorded for the archive purposes so that those who didn't join today, we have access to it later. And kindly note that we have simultaneous interpretation, English and French. So please go to the interpretation icon below your screen so that you can select the suitable language among English and French. And even if we have a specific time for an interactive session for Q&A, but ladies and gentlemen, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. You can let us know whom are we with, your names, the organizations you are representing as the time goes by, so that we can know a little bit more about you and what you do and the organizations you are representing. So before having the introduction and opening remarks, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you the tentative agenda of today's webinar. So we will start with the introduction that I'm working on. Then later on, we will have the opening remarks from Mrs. Katja Vuori, the CEO of AgriCord. She will be followed by the introduction remarks from Dr. Babafemi Oyewole, the CEO of Pan-African Farmers Organization. Before we have the presentation, which will be done by Mr. Matthieu Brun. He is the Scientific Director at Farm Foundation. He will be followed by Mrs. Maria Elena Ramirez, who is Advocacy Officer at Afdi. She will, of course, do a presentation. Later on, we have interactive sessions. So we get your questions, we answer your questions, and get your concerns as well before the conclusion and key takeaways. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, this webinar has been organized by PAFO, Pan-African Farmers Organization, Afdi, Farm, AHA, and AgriCord. So we get time to introduce these organizations as the time goes by. Before I invite the first speaker, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the organization she is representing. She is the CEO of AgriCord. Some of us who may not know what AgriCord is the global mandated by farm organizations to strengthen smallholder farmer organizations. Its members provide technical assistance to farm organizations as the key actors in resilient, inclusive, and sustainable supply chain worldwide. AgriCord collaborates with partners like regional farm organizations to equip farm organizations to achieve their strategic ambitions and deliver a lasting livelihood, environmental, and climate outcomes for farmers and rural communities. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Mrs. Katja Vuori, the CEO of AgriCord. Over to you, Mrs. Katja.
Thank you so much, Aimable, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody joining us today. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on behalf of AgriCord. And Aimable already gave a nice introduction who we are and what we do. And when it comes to dairy, we are currently working with dairy farmers in a variety of countries in East and West and Southern Africa. And this gives us not only a perspective, but a varied and practical understanding of farmer realities that differ greatly across the continent. Today's discussion is a strong reminder of how important partnerships between African and European agricultural networks are. Farmer-centric and farmers' organization-led development does not happen in isolation. It grows through collaboration, mutual learning, and long-term commitments. And in that sense, a PAFO Barometer initiative developed together with Afdi Farm Foundation is particularly inspiring. And we are also very grateful for another member of us, Andreas Hermes Academy, who is supporting PAFO in this type of knowledge exchanges in general. The Dairy Barometer brings forward valuable evidence-based insights that can help guide both policy and practice. And we are very pleased to see it being shared and discussed in this space. And as Aimable was saying, we hope that all the participants also actively bring their opinions and questions, and you can always use a chat for that also during all the interventions that you hear. We also welcome the international focus on agropastoralism, which is very relevant, and also one of the systems that is presented in this barometer. These systems are at the heart of the dairy production in West Africa, and they are adaptive, rooted in local realities, and have significant potential. But at the same time, they are under increasing pressure and face a number of structural challenges. So it's important to have tools such as this barometer that maybe helps to address some of these challenges through adapted policy measures. Agropastoral dairy systems rely on delicate balance between mobility, natural pasture, and seasonal resource availability. And one of the main constraints is feed variability. Access to land is another key issue. Access to animal health services remains limited in many agropastoral areas. And of course, market access also remains a major challenge. Many of these systems are located in remote areas with limited infrastructure and weak cold chain systems, which makes milk collection, transport, and processing difficult, leading to losses and reduced incomes for farmers. So there are many things still to be to overcome. A key dimension also I would like to emphasize in this context is, and especially as we celebrate the year of women farmers, is the central role of women in dairy systems in general. Women are often at the heart of dairy production, processing, and marketing, yet their contributions are too often overlooked, and they continue to face barriers in accessing resources, services, and decision-making spaces. For AgriCord, gender inclusion is a core priority, and I know that this is something that we share with PAFO and other farmer organization partners, also in Europe. And in this context, we have recently developed a new gender vision document which contains inspiring case studies and guides our efforts towards more inclusive agricultural systems. When it comes to dairy, climate change is of course another cross-cutting challenge that affects all regions. It impacts pasture availability, water resources, and increases the frequency of extreme weather events. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that dairy systems, like all livestock systems, contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. And this is not about questioning the importance of dairy, but rather about how we produce it. It reinforces the need for more efficient, more resilient, and more sustainable dairy systems, systems that can produce more with fewer resources, reduce losses along the value chain, and improve both environmental performance and farmer livelihoods. The challenges faced dairy systems are not the same across the African continent, as you will see when we go further in the presentations. But in East Africa, for example, dairy systems are often more integrated into markets. In Southern Africa, systems tend to be more sedentary and commercially oriented. In Central Africa, infrastructure and institutional constraints are very limiting. In Northern Africa, dairy sector is relatively market-oriented and productive, but it faces also a distinct set of structural challenges. So across all regions, there are different kinds of challenges. However, all the regions need resilient and adaptive systems for their dairy value chain, which is so important for nutrition and food security perspective. So in this context, initiatives like the Barometer play a key role. They help bring together evidence that can support stronger advocacy by farmers' organizations and other relevant stakeholders, and consequently better policies for local dairy development. Strengthening dialogue and cooperation between farmers' organizations, partners, and stakeholders is therefore essential. It is through this kind of exchanges that we can better understand both the challenges and the opportunities within agricultural value chains and work together on solutions that are sustainable and locally driven. There are also very concrete opportunities to deepen collaboration between African and European actors, whether on feed management, animal health, dairy processing, or value addition. Through its network, AgriCord is committed and well-positioned and ready to help connect expertise and support joint efforts in these areas. To conclude, again, warm welcome to the efforts of Afdi, PAFO, and FARM to increase transparency and knowledge in the African dairy sector. We look forward to building on this momentum together and to explore new collaboration that strengthen the sector and improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers. Thank you again, everybody, for sharing your time with us. And with this, I wish you all an engaging and inspiring webinar.
Thank you very much. A very round of applause to Mrs. Katja Vuori, the CEO of AgriCord, for the opening remarks. Very inspiring and very motivating contributions, reminding us why are we here today and highlighting some of the focus areas of the barometer and some of the issues that the barometer is looking to address, including access to land, market access, limited infrastructures, and mainly highlighting the role of women and inclusivity in this particular matter, showing that women play a paramount role in the dairy systems and pastoral systems, and also highlighting that the barometer play and should play a paramount role in research and helping farmer organizations moving forward, without forgetting the role of partnerships and strengthening collaborations between farmer organizations. So thank you very much, Mrs. Vuori, Katja. We hope to keep you, we hope you will be with us as we continue. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the next speaker, allow me, for those who join right now, to quickly let you know that we are here for the occasion of a webinar. We are discussing about African Agriculture Barometer, an initiative that has been developed by Afdi in partnership with PAFO, AgriCord, FARM, AHA, and others. So the objectives of today's session is to present the African Agriculture Barometer and the methodology developed during the pilot phase, and share the main findings from the first barometer dedicated to African dairy sector, discuss the potential of the African Agriculture Barometer as a tool for analysis and advocacy for farmers' organizations, gather feedback from partners and stakeholders to improve the tool and guide its future development. Last but not least, foster dialogue between African and European stakeholders based on the shared evidence data. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are inviting the second speaker, who is the Chief Executive Officer of PAFO, Dr. Babafemi Oyewole. Those who don't know about PAFO, let me tell you that PAFO stands for Pan-African Farmers Organization. It has been established in 2010 in the facilitation of the African Union Commission. It's a continental organization with a membership base composed of 5 regional farm organization networks: EFF, Sakau, ROPA, NAGRI, and the PROPAC. The PAFO is the voice of more than 80 million African farmers integrated into nearby 80 national farm organizations, and its main intervention is advocacy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Babafemi Oyewole, the Chief Executive Officer of PAFO. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, the moderator, for the introduction. Distinguished partners from AgriCord Farm Foundation, Agriculture Français et Développement International, Afdi, Andreas Hermes Academy, AHA, PAFO members, esteemed colleagues, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us for this important event. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on the African Agriculture Barometer, a tool for to understand, foster dialogue, and take action. At a time when African agriculture faces increasing challenges, from climate shocks and market volatility to financing gaps and policy disconnects, the need for reliable farmer-centered data and evidence has never been more urgent. The African Agriculture Barometer represents a powerful step forward in addressing this gap. The tool, which is the outcome of a memorandum of understanding (MOU) between the Pan-African Farmers Organization, Farm Foundation, and Afdi, is not just about measurement, but listening to farmers, amplifying their voices, and translating their realities into actionable insights for policymakers, investors, and development partners. It is about creating a shared understanding that can drive informed dialogue, stronger partnership, and more effective action across our continents. We cherish the partnership between African and European institutions to find solutions to the challenges in the agricultural sector, both in Africa and in Europe. Moreover, the barometer provides information and data on production, consumption, trade, investments, and public policy measures in African countries. It focuses on the dairy sector and emphasizes that with right policies, family farmers could be the pillar of a sector capable of feeding population, creating employment, and strengthening rural economics. The focus on the dairy sector is because globally, Africa is home to 20% of the world's cattle, but produces only 5% of its milk, and has a significant trade deficit estimated at 6.4 billion British pounds in 2023, according to the report. The barometer is a decision-making tool, but also calls for the commitment of policymakers to empower farmers' organizations and women to achieve the agricultural transformation we desire in Africa. For PAFO, that represents over 80 million family farmers across Africa. Initiatives like this are critical. They ensure that policies are not only designed for farmers, but truly created and developed with farmers. These inform the cooperation and support of PAFO for the African Agriculture Barometer Initiative. We fully appreciate the opportunity to partner with Farm Foundation and Afdi to produce the first edition of the barometer. We are also grateful to AgriCord and AHA for their technical and financial support in the organization of this webinar. Today's discussion is timely and strategic. It offers us an opportunity to reflect on how we can collectively leverage this barometer to strengthen decision-making, enhance accountability, and accelerate the transformation of Africa's agricultural and agri-food systems. Policy and decisions become impactful when they are fully understood and translated into action. We are grateful to the resource persons that has been assembled to guide us in the discussions. I therefore encourage all participants to engage actively, share insights, ask questions, and explore how we can turn knowledge and data into impact. With these few remarks, I thank you for your participation, and I wish all of us a very fruitful and engaging webinar. Thank you for your participation, and I hand over to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babafemi Oyewole, the CEO of PAFO, Pan-African Farmers Organization, for the essential and insightful remarks and the contributions, reminding us why we gathered here, the role of this barometer, the African Agriculture Barometer, that it should be a shared understanding for dialogue, and it should also be very important in decision-making tool. You also highlighted that the barometer focuses on dairy sector, whereby you also highlighted and appreciated the Afdi, AgriCord, farm, and all who have contributed successfully towards this initiative. These remarks also talks about the partnership between African and European institutions, which shows critical strength between the two continents. So thank you very much again for the good remarks from the PAFO side. Before I invite the next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this event has been supported by AHA. So allow me to let you know that AHA stands for Andreas Helmis Academy, and it's one of 13 agri-agencies under AgriCord focused on professional development in the agricultural sector for over 70 years. So since 2015, AHA has been active internationally in a close collaboration with the German Federation Association. AHA focused on high quality training, practice-oriented advisory services, and the targeted capacity building at the core of AHA work. So AHA is supporting PAFO for the exchange platform as far as other programs and initiatives. So ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is Mr. Matthieu Brun. He is the Scientific Director of Farm Foundation. Farm Foundation, for the past 20 years, the Foundation for Agriculture and Rural Development Worldwide, FARM, a recognized public benefit organization, has been working to promote sustainable agriculture worldwide, particularly in the global south. Through its research, partnership, and awareness-raising initiatives, FARM informs public and private stakeholders on the paths to follow for agricultural development that strikes a balance between economic, social, and environmental challenges. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome Mr. Matthieu, who is a Scientific Director of the Foundation for the Agriculture, to take us forward with his presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Matthieu.
Thank you, Aimable. Good morning. Hello to everyone. I'd like first to thank very, very much Katja and all the AgriCord team for your invitation and for organizing this webinar. We are very happy to present the results of this first edition of the barometer. Allow me also to thank Dr. Babafemi and PAFO team and the governance of PAFO for your support and for joining this project. Dr. Babafemi and Aimable, you explained the objectives of the barometers, and we also look forward to the production of edition 2, edition 3, or 4 and 5 on other value chains that are very important for African agriculture. So today I am pleased to present the key findings of our 2025 African Agriculture Barometer, which this year focuses on the dairy value chain in Africa. It is available in French and in English, the reports on the website. I added the link on the chat. And we also have the project of developing a platform, a web platform for accessing all the data. So first, why dairy production? Because in the face of climate, geopolitical and economic upheavals that are weakening global food systems, dairy sovereignty in Africa is emerging as a major strategic issue. Milk is an essential product for nutrition, for local economies, and it crystallizes several critical challenges: dependence on imports, untapped potential for local production, and aspiration for food system autonomy. Let me briefly outline the methodology of the barometers that's actually covering 54 African countries. It draws on robust data from different sources, FAO Stat, UN Comtrade, but also an original database on multinational dairy investments and Farm Global Observatory on public support to agriculture. We have been working with Stephen Lefau, who is also in the audience today, to build this barometer. One important thing is that we have a lot of informal production in the dairy sector in Africa, which accounts for over 80% of outputs in regions like West Africa. And this informal production is very difficult to capture in official statistics. So true production levels are likely underestimated. So let's dive into the main findings. Let's start with production. African milk supply has experienced significant growth between 2013 and 2023. It increased by 17%. Production comes from a variety of species, but cows dominate at around 80%, reflecting the diversity of African dairy systems. But there is a key paradox. Despite this growth, Africa remains a minor player in the global dairy economy. The continent accounts for only 5% of world production in 2023, a share that has remained stable over the past decade because global production grew even faster at 22%. On the next slides, you will see that there are massive regional disparities. East Africa is the dominant region with 48% of continental production and the highest growth at 26% over the past decade. North Africa comes second at 33%, but with a more moderate growth. We will discuss it later, especially linked with climate change. West and Central Africa represent modest volumes, 9% and 2% respectively, but recorded remarkable growth rates of around 30%. Production is also highly concentrated geographically. You have 8 countries: Egypt, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, Tanzania, South Africa, South Sudan, and Algeria, that account for 67, almost 70% of all African milk production. And we must keep in mind the demographic context. Africa's population grew by 28% between 2013 and 2023. And by 2050, Africa will have nearly 2.5 billion inhabitants. So production grows while real is not keeping pace with population growth. Production grows while but is not keeping the pace of population growth. So let's turn now on the next slide to issue related to trade and consumption, which is where the picture becomes truly concerning. Africa has a considerable trade deficit in dairy products. In 2023, the continent imported $7.5 billion worth of dairy products, compared with only $1 billion in exports. So this is a trade deficit of $6.4 billion. And 6 countries, you can see that on the map, alone accounts for almost 60% of imports, that are Algeria, that dominates at 22%, followed by Egypt, Nigeria, Libya, Morocco, and Senegal. So what does Africa import? And it's a key issue. Mainly it's dry dairy products, so milk powders, fat-filled milk powder, and infant formula. You have the details on that on the barometer. There is a particularly worrying trend that is the sharp rise in fat-filled milk powder imports. And I've seen that there are some people in the room that have been working on this issue. So the trend of this sharp rise is up for 41% since 2013. with 2/3 of these imports going to West Africa. This product, so fat-filled milk powder, is made by blending vegetable fats with skimmed milk. It is cheaper, but it raises nutritional quality concerns and also environmental concerns. On the supply side, you will see on the next slide that New Zealand is Africa's largest single dairy supplier with over $1 billion in exports. But the European Union collectively remains the main partner, France through historical ties, and increasingly islands, and especially Poland, with a remarkable growth of almost 264% growth in the last decade. You will also find in the barometer new strategic suppliers that are emerging, like Malaysia. Of course, it is related to the issue of fat-filled milk powder and vegetable fats, and the United Arab Emirates, the latter largely through re-exports of New Zealand milk powder. So what about consumption and availability? You will see on the next slide that in 2022, average milk availability stood at just 45 kilograms per capita and per year. It's well below the World Health Organization recommended intake of 70 to 90 kilos and far from the world average of 120 kilos. The self-sufficiency rate, which is the share of consumption covered by domestic production, stood at 80% at the continental level in 2022. But the disparities are also very big between different regions in Africa. East Africa is nearly self-sufficient at 90.5%, while Central Africa stands at only around 50% of self-sufficiency. There's Uganda that shows a surplus at 108% and has begun exporting milk powder, for example, to Algeria. So this import dependence makes African consumers extremely vulnerable to world price fluctuation and supply chain disruption, as we saw during the COVID-19 crisis, when the FAO price index of milk powders rose by more than 20%. We'll see also the current crisis with what's happening in the Gulf region, and we see the impact also on consumption and nutrition issues. So let's now talk and take a look at investment and public policies. You will see on the barometer that they are the European business and European companies are quite predominant and among the largest dairy companies operating in Africa. And at the same time, many African small and medium enterprises, SMEs, and artisanal mini dairies are long-standing operators in local milk processing, and they are very essential to milk processing. There's a striking indicator that we have put together in the barometer. Only 1.6% of African milk production was processed into derivatives like powder, cheese, and yogurt. In 2022, this figure has remained unchanged since 2012, despite equipment imports. And when processing does occur, it is not necessarily from local milk. So it means when dairies, mini dairies or big companies are processing milk, especially in West Africa, they use imported milk powder, and it keeps the dependence. It's perpetuating the dependence. Equipment imports also reveal geographic disparities. You can see that on the slide on the right. North Africa captures almost 40% of continental imports between 2013 and 2023, followed by East Africa at around 30%. Algeria, Angola, Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa are the main importers of dairy processing equipment. So let's now look at the public policies, and we observe a clear split between two strategies. First, interventionist approaches that aimed at food sovereignty. Algeria is an emblematic case. It's the world's second largest milk powder importer after China, providing substantial subsidies to farmers, regulating retail milk prices, and also importing heifers and investing in dairy facilities. In West Africa, the regional offensive for local milk aims also to double production to 10 billion liters by 2030. So it's another example of those interventionist approaches. Second, you have the competitiveness-oriented strategies, as in Uganda and South Africa, which support export growth while keeping import barriers low, so processors can produce finished products for continental markets. One critical concern is that international development funding may decrease. You will see that on the next slide. No, it's on this slide. Sorry, on the left side of the slide. So there is a concern about international assistance, international development assistance, because the funding may decrease, and you have some countries that are highly dependent on those supports for their dairy sector or the livestock sector, like Ethiopia, which is the top recipient with $500 million between 2013 and 2023, which is a key issue when it comes to the funds and the official development assistance fund and the disengagement of donors. So let's wrap up with the future challenges and the call to action. So let me conclude with that. There are four key challenges. The first one is climate change. It was mentioned by Katja and Dr. Babafemi. It is the overarching threat. Africa faces temperature rises of up to 4 degrees by the end of the century, and the impact is already miserable. For instance, the prolonged drought in Kenya, in between 2020 and 2023 killed more than 2.5 million livestock animals, and we had also a very concerning drought in Morocco. And although Africa contributes just 4% of global greenhouse gas emission, livestock accounts for 17% of the continent's emission. So it means that it's creating a dual imperative for the farmers and the economies of adaptation and mitigation at the same time. And we also should mention the effects of climate change on the health of farmers, but also on animal health, especially when we are now 1 week from the One Health conference in Lyon that will be held in France. And we will look into the connection and the systemic connection between animal health, human health, and the plant health and environment health. There is a second issue, which is land use pressures that is actually intensifying conflicts. I'm sure that you have some ideas on what's happening now with especially in the Sudano-Sahelian zone, with the rise in cultivation of land. Almost double over 4 decades, which reduce, of course, transhumance corridors. It's a very high question on the agenda, especially with regard to this annual UN International Year of Pastoralism. Of course, there is the issue of infrastructure gaps. It remains massive. Over 60 million Africans lack access to electricity and severely limiting cold chain deployments, which is essential for milk quality and marketability. If you are interested in this issue, we have published a policy brief with Afdi Farm and the French research center CIRAD last year. And of course, it was mentioned by Katja, there's the critical gender dimension that is to be looked at, especially when women make up to 50% of the agricultural workforce in sub-Saharan Africa and play a central role in traditional milk processing. So in conclusion, The data are clear. Africa has enormous untapped dairy potential, but realizing it requires simultaneous action on multiple fronts, coherent public policies, agricultural and trade policies, for instance, responsible private investment, strengthened producer organization, infrastructure development, fair trade frameworks, and of course, climate adaptation. Dairy sovereignty cannot be built without recognizing the central role of family farmers, women, cooperatives, and also producers' organization. So this barometer is both a decision-making tool and a call to action. And I hope together we can make milk a real lever for sovereignty, social justice, and prosperity for the African continent. Thank you very much, and I will be happy to take your questions and remarks on the different indicators we've put together, and maybe you will also have some ideas for next value chains that we can analyze through this barometer methodology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A very round big applause to Mr. Matthieu for his wonderful presentation with detailed statistics, key findings, and future challenges anticipated and call for action, where climate change, land use and conflicts, infrastructure gaps, gender and inclusion. But one of the key findings was the trade deficit of 6.4 billion USD, which is very critical. So I think we get time maybe to get more about these statistics. I have seen some of the questions from the chat, but we will first complete the presentation already prepared. So I have seen some of the key concerns. Now, let me remind the audience that Mr. Matthieu Brun, he leads strategic work on the geopolitical of agriculture, the agroecological transition, and the adaptation of agricultural value chains to climate change. He holds a PhD in political science and serving as an associate researcher at Sciences Po Bordeaux. He contributes his expertise to agriculture and food policy at the international level. So thank you very much, Mr. Matthieu, for a wonderful presentation. Now, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the next speaker. She is Mrs. Maria Elena Ramirez. She is the head of advocacy and communication at Afdi. Afdi is Agriculture Français et Développement International. She previously served as the chief of staff at the Senate of Bolivia. She is a specialist in migration, gender, and the climate change issues, and so many others. So Afdi, in short, is an association for international solidarity founded by French agricultural trade organizations. This organization supports family farmers so that they can earn a decent living from their work. Maybe Maria will talk more about Afdi during her presentation. So welcome, Mrs. Maria, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Aimable. Good morning and good afternoon for everybody joining us in this webinar. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today. Thank you for your kind words and introduction, and thank you, Matthieu, for your presentation. It gave us a very clear overview of what we wanted to create with this African Agriculture Barometer. I also want to thank AgriCord and PAFO, as well as the Andreas Hermes Academy, to being able to put together this webinar today and having us all present to you today with this tool. So I think it's a good moment to also recognize the collective work behind this initiative. It has been a very long and very engaging journey to reach to this stage, and it's very encouraging to see what has already been achieved and as the potential for what we can build in the future. So to build on what's already been presented and to complement the information that Matthieu already presented, I would like to focus on three main aspects. The first one is the importance of access to data, because it increases the analytical and advocacy capacities for farmers' organization and for every actor involved on agricultural systems. The second is the role of data in supporting dialogue and contributing to more informed approaches to agricultural development. And finally, some perspectives for the future, especially regarding the further development of the tool, the next editions, what will come next, what we want to do, and how can it be improved, especially. And for that, we need we need information that come from here, from like this kind of activities and these kind of webinars, because we need to know how can we make it better. So when we started working on this tool, and when we launched the idea, we wanted to create something that it can be useful in both contexts, from and for Africans and for French and European perspective. For actors in Africa, the barometer can reinforce a stronger capacity to analyze and engage, upgrading their role in development strategies. And from European and international stakeholders, it can offer a more grounded understanding of agricultural systems and their interconnection within the region, which is essential for building partnerships that are both informed and coherent. In this sense, the barometer is not only a data tool, it's a support for analysis, dialogue, and anticipation. Its value it lies in the ability to bring together the different kind of information, the different types of information, as Matthieu already showed us, to make them accessible, to link economic, social, and policy dimension in a consistent way. So we're now currently facing a context that is shaped by multiple and interconnected transformation, climate change, evolving economic conditions, demographic trends, and geopolitical dynamics that are all influencing agricultural systems and food markets. But these changes are creating more complex systems, from production to trade, from local markets to global value chains. And as a result, decision-making is becoming more demanding, and it requires a better understanding of these dynamics to anticipate changes and to respond effectively. This is why access to reliable, accessible, free, well-structured data is essential. It helps us to have a better understanding of how agricultural systems are evolving, identify trends, highlight both challenges and opportunity. It also helps us build a shared understanding among stakeholders and every actor, which is very important because when many actors are involved, each one has their own perspective, their own priority, and their own idea of how things should be. But at the same time, access to data and the ability to use them, it remains today uneven. Many decisions are still based on partial information or on analysis that are not widely shared. So this can actually limit the ability of some actors to fully take part into discussion and to contribute into policies and strategies. When it comes to farmers' organization, it's even more important because even though they have a strong knowledge of the realities on the ground, they only have part of the information. So addressing this gap is very important when we're talking about making decisions more inclusive and balanced, improving access to not only the technical issue, but also the social part. It's also about participation and the ability of the different actors to contribute to the discussions, to have a say in the public policies that can actually impact them. So that was the main objective when we wanted to create this tool, when we wanted to develop something that it can be both technical, but also an strategical resources. When we have a better understanding of agricultural realities, we can offer a clear picture. It allows stakeholders to move from a perception to more evidence-based analysis. This is fundamental when decisions have long-term impacts on food systems, livelihoods, and economic development. So when we were developing this tool and we were deciding what were the main aspects that we should focus, we actually, as Matthieu already showed you, we focus on the economical part. So and the barometer actually provides very concrete insight. For example, the dairy sector, it highlights the gap between growing demand and the limits of local production systems. But it also allows us to better understand the diversity of the situation across the countries. It shows us that there is no single model working on when we talk about dairy systems, but rather a wide range of production systems, level of competitiveness, and a degree of market integration. And this diversity is very important when designing policies and development strategies, because it calls for approaches that actually adapt to the difference, to the diversity of these specificities in a national and a regional level. But what I think it's most important of this of the barometer of what we wanted to create is that the contribution, it not only focuses on economic indicators, but it also reflects the social dimension of agricultural systems. It highlights the role of dairy farming in livelihoods in rural economic. It can show how value chains are organized and how different actors, including local family farmers, are integrated or sometimes excluded for market opportunities. This tool actually allows us to put into the table to have a discussion that are not limited to trade or production, but it also considers the social impact. It provides us a forward-looking perspective by analyzing trends such as population growth, consumption patterns. It helps us to anticipate future pressure on agriculture and how we need to adapt to respond and to make it sustainable. So this type of analysis can support more proactive approaches rather than reactive ones. That is the case right now. So for looking ahead and seeing what we can do, or what we can actually, what we want to do after this is strengthen these approaches. The next step is develop a digital platform, for instance, that will allow to make data easier to access, because what we wanted to do is having something that is easy to share, easy to understand, easy to participate. So the next step for us is actually creating a digital platform that will allow us to explore more information across countries, to have more information about value chains and time periods, support wider use of this, data and decision making. We also want to do, we will actually like to explore the possibility to do other kind of barometers and other kind of systems like seeds or cereals that will also help us to provide a more complete understanding of agriculture system in general. So because we can interact with the different systems, so we don't only focus on milk or dairy, we can also have the other visions, and that information is actually vital when we're looking about a global, regional and development strategy. So to conclude, I think we can, I'll do a final words and then we can go to the Q&A questions. I think that improving access to use and data is an important opportunity to support more informed, inclusive agricultural development. It helps us improve the decision making, strengthen the dialogue, and support more balanced partnerships. And this barometer, and that's what we wanted, that was the idea behind it. It will help us to connect the field reality with the policy frameworks. So it makes it easier to define priorities, whether in terms of supporting local production, improving infrastructure, or just adjusting the trade policies. The same applies to investment and cooperation strategies. By identifying bottlenecks in collection systems or gaps in processing capacity, this barometer, this tool, can help us guide investment toward areas where they are most needed. So this can support a more integrated approach to development, considering the diversity of contexts and the links between the sectors. So this tool, this barometer, involves it can involve a wide range of actors, each one with their own perspective and sources of information. But when the discussion relies on a common analytical basis, it becomes easier to clarify issues, compare viewpoints, and identifying some areas of convergence. So it shows us what we can do next. And I think that's very important, and that's what it's the most value of this tool that we wanted to create today. So thank you very much. Thank you, Aimable, for your moderation, and we're hoping to have a lot of questions so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Malia Elena Ramirez, for your brilliant presentation, which has been turning around how this tool can be better used for advocacy, that better data leads to better allocation of resources, which is true. Without having data, there is no way we can better allocate resources, and it can also be very problematic. And also, again, highlighting that at the global level, Africa accounts 20% of the world's cattle herd, yet only produces 5% of global milk output. So this is very critical. I think we have more answers and concerns about it. Now, this marks the end of the presentation session. Now we will kick off the interactive session where we will hear from the audience, the attendees. I would like to start from the questions already raised in the chat. There are two questions. One says is from Mr. Benoit. It says, regarding this figure of 1.6, we have always struggled to account for the volume of locally produced milk that is processed artisanally or within the informal economy. How do you take this into account in your study? That's the first question. I think Mr. Matthieu will try to respond to this. And if Maria also have some contributions, she can add on. Je vois qu'il y a aussi une question posée par Monsieur Jean de Mata, Tsang Manga. Il se présente d'abord et il dit avez-vous un roadmap de production de baromètre des agriculteurs africains? Pour quelle autre chaîne de valeur prévoyez-vous de publier? À quelle fréquence prévoyez-vous de publier? Il dit merci pour votre réponse. Now, I just want Mr. Matthieu, maybe the question of Benoit about this figure 1.6. How do you take this into accountable? And also, if you have some input you can do for the second question of Jamata, maybe it can be good. Over to you, Mr. Matthieu.
Thank you very much, Aimable. I will answer the first question from Benoit, and I will let Mae answer the second question on the roadmap. So thank you very much, Benoit, for your question, and that's a very important point. Our colleague Stephen already kind of answers your question, and it's as I said, it's a very important point and one that we are fully transparent about in the barometer. So first, let me kind of clarify what the 1.5% figure actually measures. It is the industrial processing rate. So it's the volume of processed products, milk powder, cheese, yogurt, relative to total milk production as recorded in FAO stat data. So by construction, this indicator captures only what enters formal statistically recorded processing channels. And you are absolutely right that this figure does not account for artisanal and informal processing, which is in fact the dominant form of milk transformation across quite a large part of the continent. We know that many African SMEs, what we call mini laiteries or mini dairies, are quite long-standing operators in local milk processing, especially in peri-urban areas. So they're very important for food security and access to dairy products. And women play a key central role in this processing. But we explicitly acknowledge that in the methodological limitation in the barometer, it's at the end of the barometer, that we cannot use we don't have access to all the informal production, and that it's a very important production because it is self-consumed by farming households, or it is sold through informal circuits, which makes statistical tracking extremely difficult. But it was a key issues that we discussed with the rest of the team, with PAFO and Afdi, in order to have a useful data, and in order to produce data relevant advocacy policies, we thought it would be better to focus on the data that are used also by the government. And we had some colleagues, especially from the different research center in African countries, that are trying to improve the data collection regarding informal production. So it means, of course, that it's not the true production levels, but this is also something that we wanted to shed light on in this barometer. The 1.6% should also be read not as the full picture of African dairy processing, but rather as an indicator of the formal industrial processing capacity, which strikingly has not progressed in a decade. We're still around the 1.5, 1.6, 1.7%. So the real challenge it highlights is the gap between the enormous volume of milk produced and the very limited capacity to add value through industrial channels, and of course add value for the farmers and those that are producing it. And it is necessary, of course, for longer shelf life and for reaching urban consumers at scale. So this is precisely why we argue in the barometer that investment in processing infrastructure, including support to artisanal and semi-industrial operator, is a strategic priority. And thank you again for your question.
Thank you very much, Matthieu. If you get time, or if Ramirez would love to come with the second question. But in the meantime, there is another question raised by... Il y a quand même les questions qui ont été posées par Monsieur Baboucar Barthe. Il dit: bonjour, je suis Baboucar Barthe, journaliste et directeur de Radio au Sénégal. Mes questions sont: quelle est la place réservée à la communication dans ces différents projets pour une appropriation auprès des communautés? Deuxièmement, comment sortir nos populations de cette pauvreté endémique avec tout le potentiel que le continent regorge? Je ne sais pas si Monsieur Matthieu va répondre à ça, ou aussi Maria, mais je pense que quand même, ce qui concerne l'aspect communication, peut-être que vous avez prévoyé quand même quelque chose.
So I can answer this question. I'll do it in English, so it can be translated in French through the channel. So what we are when we talk about the communication and how to make this tool appropriation by the actors, we are actually planning on doing something that it's been done in Europe, in France and in Europe, and we're planning on like participation in different activities and showing this tool to the different actors. So we have like it's not only been used in Europe or in France, but it also has the appropriation, and it's also been used in Africa. That's one of the main parts of this, or what we created this tool and why we wanted to do it, because it has this north and south vision, and it can be used in both contexts. And what we're planning in the communication level is, well, we started with this webinar, so we can start showing what we did and what we wanted to create. And we're planning to participate in different activities in Africa, especially in different conferences and in different spaces that are actually allow us to show this tool. And we will be happy to answer any questions. So the idea is to working with the different actors and also like sharing with the press, and we're starting this communication part, but the idea is to actually allow us to do it in Africa and in Europe. So the idea is to have both of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. There is another question in the chat raised in French from Mr. Noureddin Ben. Mr. Noureddin. Il dit: les questions sur les résultats du baromètre laitier africain, les résultats confirment une forte dépendance aux importations, notamment poudre et de lait. Quelles sont, selon vous, les causes structurelles les plus déterminantes. Comment expliquez-vous le paradoxe entre croissance de la production, plus 17 et baisse de l'autosuffisance? Il dit aussi le baromètre met-il en évidence les différences significatives entre les pays leaders comme le Kenya, l'Éthiopie et pays intermédiaires comme le Maroc ou le Sénégal? I think this talks more about the findings that has been presented by Mr. Matthieu. Mr. Matthieu, maybe you would love to comment on this or respond to this question.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions, and I'm very happy to see that you have many questions and remarks. It's a very big topic, the issue of dairy value chain, especially for the continent. But I will try to give some insights on those questions. So, on the structural causes of import dependence, I think that they are 3 or 4 main structural factors. First, the infrastructural deficit, as I mentioned, the lack of electricity, the lack of access to refrigeration tanks. It means that no cold chain, no capacity to collect and preserve fresh milk at scale. There's also a processing gap, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of transformation. And last but not least, maybe because I am graduated in political science, there's also an issue related to policy incoherences, especially trade and agricultural policies. Countries like Senegal and Benin have negative rates of assistance. So it means that their own policies effectively tax local producers, while at the same time cheap fat-filled powder enter with very low tariffs. And it's a key question, and I know that some like Afdi and also Umundi have been working on that issue. We should also mention that to reduce this dependence to imports, there's a crucial factor, which is the ability of the industrial dairy sector to produce milk powder. And there are just a few countries like Uganda who is now able to produce this milk powder. So maybe briefly on the paradox, production up to 17%, but self-sufficiency declining. I think that the explanation relies on demography, on the fact that demography actually outpaces production. So yes, of course, milk production grew by almost 20%, but the population grew by 30%. So per capita availability has actually stagnated or even declined, depending on the different countries, and the gap is once again filled by imports, which grew a lot more faster than domestic production. I actually like the question on the differences between leading and intermediate countries. There are some profiles like Kenya and Ethiopia that are high volume producers with large herds and of course ambitious national strategies like Kenya and Ethiopia, as I mentioned, and they benefit from quite some official development assistance and established also producer organizations. So it's a well-structured organization. You have also Morocco and Senegal that face different challenges. Morocco with a well-structured dairy sector, but was hardly hit by climate stress. Production fell between 2020 and 2022 because of the drought and also input inflation with the crisis. I mean, the war in Ukraine. So there are different issues related to this different kind of strategies in terms of milk production. I think I will stop here in order to have different questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Matthieu. I can see the hand from Mr. Noureddin Ben Kadi. I'm not sure whether your question was answered or if you still have a question. If yes, please open your microphone and ask your question. Yeah. Mr. Nureddin? And in the meantime, we wish also to give a chance those who have a question maybe to raise their hands in case we've been checking the questions shared in the chat box. But if you want to raise a hand, but I would love that you be straightforward, just stick on the question very strategically. Mr. Nureddin, are you speaking? Because we can't hear you now.
Alors, audio.
Oui, allez-y.
Ouais, c'est bon maintenant?
Oui, c'est bon maintenant. Allez-y.
Bah, tout d'abord, moi, yes, attends que j'enlève la traduction. Yes. Je remercie la PAFO d'avoir organisé ce webinaire parce que bon, vous avez assisté avec les intervenants Matthieu et Maria. C'était au sommet de l'image le 8 octobre. Et bon, on avait juste, disons, annoncé ce baromètre et moi je l'attendais. Donc, je vous remercie. Et puis, je pense que pour le secteur laitier en Afrique, il faudrait qu'on donne beaucoup plus d'importance, beaucoup plus de... Parce que beaucoup de potentialités, mis à part l'infrastructure, disons, la conservation du lait, disons, pour avec un moyen de réfrigération, mais on a beaucoup de choses à faire au niveau de l'Afrique. Moi, je vois déjà, par exemple, les pays qui produisent, vous avez bien cité l'Ouganda. L'Ouganda qui fait Alors, pourquoi encore importer en Europe? C'est sûr que ça peut être une question de prix, mais c'est discutable au niveau de l'Union africaine, au niveau du PAFO, pour essayer d'échanger entre pays. OK? Alors, il y a aussi cette question toujours dépendant des imports, que ce soit à partir d'un pays africain ou de l'Europe. Mais il est temps que nos pays, nos gouvernements, fassent des stratégies appropriées pour essayer de lever cette partie disons, de la production des usines laitières en Afrique, mais à partir du lait local. Il faudrait faire des stratégies bien adaptées, appropriées. Ça, du point de vue, disons, industrialisation de la partie de la production locale. Il y a aussi beaucoup à faire en termes d'amélioration génétique à travers l'insémination. Et là, entre nos pays africains, on peut faire beaucoup de choses à travers, disons déjà, la production de semences d'insémination artificielle. Et moi, j'étais en Mali, j'étais dans d'autres pays, et on peut améliorer la production laitière d'une façon vertigineuse en quelques années. C'est des races locales qui sont existantes en Afrique, mais on peut les améliorer avec de l'insémination artificielle, avec des semences bien adaptées. Déjà, par exemple, au Maroc, on produit de la semence et qui n'est pas très, je dirais, top génétique, mais c'est suffisant pour essayer, comme on le dit, de remplir une vache. Mais de toute façon, ça peut que augmenter la production. Alors, il y a aussi beaucoup à faire au niveau de l'alimentation. Parce que l'Afrique, elle engorge de production, disons, fourragère. Il y a beaucoup il y a beaucoup d'herbes, etc. Mais on n'arrive pas donc à exploiter ça et à produire et à le conserver. Parce qu'on peut facilement développer ce qu'on appelle l'ensilage, c'est une conservation humide, et c'est pour disons, reporter la consommation de ces ensilages dans les périodes où il y a une pénurie. Bon, il y a beaucoup à dire, mais je pense que j'ai pris beaucoup de temps. Avec la PAFO, moi je suis membre du CMT. Bon, il y a rien. Hier, on avait présenté tout des présentations importantes. Moi, j'avais fait l'élevage de précision et là, c'est un domaine qu'on peut aussi essayer de toucher quelques pays qui sont déjà à la pointe en Afrique pour essayer aussi encore d'améliorer la production. Et au niveau du PAFO, moi, je fais partie de cette organisation. Et moi, je suis prêt à aller de l'avant et disons, travailler dans le cadre de ce baromètre, etc., pour essayer d'améliorer notre production locale au niveau des pays. Et merci beaucoup. Et merci pour Matthieu et Maria. À très bientôt.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Noureddin. Thank you very much, Mr. Noureddin. I think we have around 15 minutes to go. I'm not sure whether we still have hands. I didn't see any hand raised. But in the meantime, there are 3 questions raised in the chat in French. Premièrement, ça vient du monsieur Saïdou Boudot. De quelle manière cet outil peut-il influencer les politiques agricoles nationales et garantir que la voix des agriculteurs soit réellement prise en compte? Il y a aussi une autre question, dans quelle mesure le baromètre de l'agriculture africaine est-il adaptable au contexte fragile comme le Sahel, où les défis sécuritaires et climatiques affectent fortement l'agriculture? Et en fait, existe-t-il des opportunités de partenariat ou de renforcement des capacités pour les ONG locales en fait de mieux comprendre et utiliser cet outil? Mr. Matthieu, probably these 3 questions about how this tool can influence agricultural policies and maybe the partnership with the NGOs. I'm not sure whether you have any contribution or Maria, anyone can just take the floor.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give some insights to Saïdou Ilboudo, and Maye can also add stuff. As I mentioned on the chat, we'll be happy to discuss how it can, how we can organize or make sure that it is used by producer organization and civil society. This is the purpose of the barometer, and this is also why we've been building this project with PAFO, and we hope that we can continue on that. The very objective was to influence public policies, and we know how important PAFO is now, and the producer organization with the connection with public policies. So this was the idea of not having a very big report of 200 pages, because we can write maybe 1,000 pages on dairy and livestock and milk production in Africa. But the idea was to have like really sharp indicators that will help those that are actually discussing with public policies and private actors to help them. So I hope that it's going to be used. And regarding the voicing farmers and hearing the voice of farmers, it's also why we actually committed to work with PAFO, because it is the voice of the African farmers, and we hope that in the future development of barometers, we can also add maybe some interviews, try to collect information about how a producer organization are structured on the field, and try to have even more on the farmer voices. Mai, would you like to add something? I also see some questions from Julien, I think, on GHG emission. Maybe we can also take that one after that.
Yes, just to complete a little bit of what you already said. So what we wanted and we were hoping that this barometer would accomplish is that it could play a key role in shaping agricultural policies, because we're providing with reliable evidence-based data and we're highlighting the realities of agriculture value chains and the farmers' organizations and the farmers' constraints and contributions. So we can make both dynamicals visible. It could help build a bridge between this gap between the reality and the policy making. And what we would want to do is that there's an appropriation from farmers, so they can use this data, they can use this information to strengthen, to make it stronger, their advocacy, and they can engage more effectively in this dialogue. And it can actually set the intervention priorities. It can actually identify where the key bottlenecks along the value chain, and they can so that the organization, the actors can target their actions where the needs are more critical. For instance, collection systems, infrastructure, transportation. So if we can identify where the problem is, where we have to work harder, so it's easier to establish some solutions. So that's the idea behind it.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the contributions. Now we have around 9 minutes remaining. We are almost heading to the end, but just stay. We haven't concluded yet. I would probably suggest, and maybe it has been done, but it can also be redone, to share the contacts or the focal points from Afdi, FARM, or even PAFO, so that those who are interested to know more about the barometer or know more about PAFO, AgriCord, Afdi, there will be bilateral chats after this session, because we can't answer all the questions at this session. You can understand that we have limited time. We tried, but we will continue the engagement. Now, I would like to maybe request our speakers, mainly Mr. Matthieu and Maria, just maybe you have had questions from the audience, but you might have something that still was maybe not well defined, well clarified from your end. So I will just give each of you maybe 2 to 3 minutes just to summarize or have some key takeaways from your side, especially coming back to the points or the questions that you want the audience to know that has not been spoken before. Maybe let me start from Mr. Matthieu.
Thank you very much, Aimable, and once again, thanks for all the questions. And I put my email on the chat, so and I'd be happy to discuss, of course, with Mai and the PAFO team how we can work together. I would like to take this opportunity, Aimable, just to give some maybe insight on the question related to GHG emission and production method. But I think it's a very interesting question that was raised by someone in the chat, because it's a key question. Emission intensity, of course, depends heavily on the production system, and it is a key element for Africa. Of course, the Africa accounts for 20% of the world cattle herd, but only 5% of milk output. So it means that emissions per liter of milk are significantly higher than in more productive systems. Not because African livestock is more polluting, and it's definitely not what we wanted to say, but because productivity per animal remains very low, and Noureddin pointed out some key elements, especially regarding genetics. For instance, Ethiopia is averages just 2 liters per cow per day. So there is a gap to be filled regarding productivity, but it means that we should not increase the outputs. We should both increase outputs and reduce emissions intensity per unit of milk, and it's a key challenge for the future. And I think it would be my key takeaway, because if we want to raise, of course, milk production in Africa, the issue of mitigation and CO2 emissions I think is crucial. But I'm sure that we can discuss it maybe on a different occasion. And once again, thanks to AgriCord and thanks to PAFO for organizing this wonderful presentation, and I'm very happy to be part of it. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Matthieu. Mrs. Maria, do you have any key takeaway from your end or any area of focus?
Yes, well, thank you very much for everybody that participated and everybody that make it possible to be here today, to all the teams that work together. And just as a final remark, yes, what we wanted to do is that this tool, this barometer that we created, it's something that it not belongs to us, it belongs to everybody. We wanted everybody to be able to use it, to be able to understand it. It's easy to share, easy to see where the priorities are, where we have to work. But especially it provides us with this. Tools like this would allow us to actually adapt the strategies to local realities, and that's very important because we are always talking about that how difficult it is to put together in the same discussion the stakeholders and the farmers organizations and every actor that's working on agricultural systems, and each one of them has a little bit of information, but not everybody has the whole picture. So when we created this tool, we wanted to be able to everybody to be able to sit on the same table and to be able to actually share what they know and what we can make it better. So it's we can adapt the strategy to actually respond and to actually have an answer to local realities. So by combining this barometer data with the field knowledge work, the local actors and everybody and the stakeholders and everybody working on these issues can actually contextualize the analysis. This can lead to interventions that are more relevant and grounded, especially because we can integrate overlook information, so some information that it's not always there. And I think that's important to be shared and to be important to actually, that's what the idea behind this barometer was. So what I want to say is that yes, we have a lot of work left to do. We have a lot of communication and improving this tool, and we want to make it better. We wanted to make it really useful. So every bit of information that we get it's important, and we'll be happy to work with everybody who wants to continue to build this. So thank you very much once again to all the teams. Thank you, AgriCord. Thank you, PAFO. Thank you to the Farm Foundation. It's been a real pleasure to be here. I also share my email on the chat. If you want to contact me, feel free to do it. But you can also find more information on the QR code that we share. So you can download the barometer and you can have access to our informations.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the key takeaways. I think we have Katja with us, but before I give her time for closing remarks, allow me to just share with you some of the key takeaways. Of course, some of the key takeaways have been shared by Mr. Matthieu and Maria, but let me just remind the audience that today we had a very interesting webinar under the theme, the African Agriculture Barometer, a tool to understand, foster dialogue, and take action. It has been organized today, Tuesday, 31st March, online. So we had speakers. We had opening remarks from Mrs. Katja Vuori, the CEO of AgriCord. We had introduction remarks from Dr. Babafemi Oyewole, the CEO of PAFO, and the presentation from Mr. Matthieu Brun from FAM and Mrs. Maria Elena Ramirez from Afdi. So with those presentations and remarks, some of the key insights have been noted from my end, but everyone may have taken note others. So maybe we can say that research plays a paramount role in shaping agriculture and advocacy in particular. Thus, we need adequate tools such as the African Agriculture Barometer. Number two, the African Agriculture Barometer that has been deeply presented is very important as one of the tools to foster dialogues and advocacy. The methodology has been used, data from various partners, international and global organization institutions, and this underlines reliability. And the pilot phase has used advanced research techniques and have provided data about production, like growth, where Africa remains marginal and where the milk production has gained a significant increase of 17% between 2013 and 2023. The research also shows a dairy target deficit of 6.4 billion USD, while milk availability per capita shows 45.6 kg per year, which is below target because the WHO target is between 70 and 90 kg. Furthermore, the barometer shows that 1.6 of the African milk is processed in 2022 and it changed since 2012. The barometer has presented the future challenges and call for action. Some of them is the climate change, where up to plus 40% degrees Celsius by 2011 will be observed. There are issues about land use and conflicts, infrastructures gaps, gender and inclusion, where 50% of agricultural workforce in sub-Saharan Africa. So there is a call for inclusion and inclusive in the value chains and modernization, which is very essential. So it was also noted that at the global level, Africa accounts for 20% of the world's cattle herd, yet only produces 5% of global milk output. And with this situation and the presentations, there has been highlights on how to strengthen agricultural decision-making from data, and that decisions often taken with partial information, which should also be enhanced. Creating a shared understanding of challenges using evidence-based policies is very important, and that better data leads to better allocation of resources. And we have seen the tool and its findings. I guess it's time for everyone to use the findings, but also continue chatting and sharing the insights to Afdi, FAM, PAFO, AgriCord, so that this tool can be strengthened. So those are what I have taken notes as key takeaways. Then I'd like to invite Mrs. Katja, who is still with us, for the closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much. Not much is left to be said other than that definitely we should continue this discussion. I think this session shows that there's a lot of interest and a lot of important questions to dig deeper and see how the barometer can be useful for African dairy sector, but also what this discussion shows is that this is an interconnected system, not only local production, but it's impacted by what is happening in the trade policies and so on. So I think also continuing the discussion with the European farmers, because I think that is one of the closest systems that is impacting what is happening in Europe dairy is impacting what is happening for the African dairy sector and vice versa. And of course, the climate challenge is also, that is impacting everyone wherever we live. So I think this session is emphasizing the need for very localized knowledge, because not one system fits all, but also the importance of continuing this type of intercontinental dialogue so that we all understand better each other's realities and understand what kind of policy environments are conducing for resilient and adaptive dairy systems in different parts of the world. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and to be continued. Have a nice day or evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.